Hello, everyone. I'm Pamela Marshall at the Wellness Radio TV and at the Wellness Radio TV podcast. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Insight, Seeing with the Heart, where my guest every week that we're on doing the show is Carlos Taylor in Muncie, Indiana. Hello, Carlos. How are you?
Good. How are you, cousin?
Doing very well, very well.
Good.
Carlos, and we are thrilled to have as our guest this evening Ron Coleman, who is in Charleston. Is that Charleston, South Carolina?
Charleston, South Carolina, one of the most beautiful historic cities in the country.
You're absolutely right. I've been there.
Downtown Charleston.
I have enjoyed it. I have enjoyed going down to the market and all of the sights and sounds. Everybody, I really, really thank you all for watching this show because, as has been said many times, the disability community is a community that you always have a chance to join. Anything can happen in your life that you can become disabled. And that's why it is so critical, I think, that we have these conversations. And we're honored to have the gentleman with us tonight to talk about, especially now in this pandemic, this COVID pandemic, where there are so many changes that have taken place. Now the vaccine is out, but also Carlos is blind. He lost his sight when he was around 7 years old. Ron Coleman is blind. Ron lost his vision when he was 12 years old. So these men who, it's said that when you lose your sight, other senses are heightened. So when you live in a world where you are touching and feeling things to help identify, and now we're in this journey of COVID and washing hands and touching and keeping 6 feet distance is very challenging for the visually impaired and the blind community. And we want to talk about these challenges and how you in your communities can help and be cognizant of the things that people are going through. How is it, just Carlos, if you will just, what have been the biggest challenges for you?
That's an excellent question. So, due to just the way I live, I use public transportation. As a matter of fact, today I went to the dentist, and so I use public transportation to get there. And if I'm, if my other half Kelly's, busy doing something or at work, then that's the only other option I have really to get around. So using public transportation, just being cautious, I wear my mask, I do have to, touch the rails and things to get aboard and depart the vehicle. But, cognizant of that, wash my hands, use hand sanitizer, all those sorts of things to be cautious. So it is more challenging, more things to think about than before COVID, but it's doable. And then like I said, I went to the dentist today, and so at the dentist office, fortunately, it's an office I've been to for several years, so I know the layout of the waiting room. But they've removed some chairs so that they can keep people further apart. So, but just small things in that regard, but there are some definite differences.
Yeah. Ron, how has it been for you?
Well, with my lovely other half, it's certainly been easier than it would have been otherwise. But I live here in Charleston because it gives me a lot of independence. I can be almost totally dependent on myself and going wherever I want to go. And in dealing with the COVID, I'm a firm believer in wearing masks when I'm inside places. I walk around with my hand spray, and I use it, particularly when I'm dealing with open doors and so forth. I don't use transportation. I also, by the way, carry a pair of gloves with me most of the time, so that I protect my hands. And I am also I have a hobby as a singer, and so when I go out to places where I'm performing, I wear my mask,
You wear your
and I
mask
only
while you're
lift it up if
singing?
I'm taking a sip of wine or when I'm at the microphone.
So
And
you,
otherwise, my life has been following the rules set down by the CDC.
Carlos, so are you working from home?
Yes, I'm currently working from home. I have been coming up on a year already. It'll be a year as of March 12th, I believe it will 12th, 11th or 12th. But yeah, coming up on a year.
As I am learning, people in the disability community have been asking to be able to work from home, and many times they're told no. How
Mhm.
do you all think this pandemic is going to change the environment for those who are visually impaired, those who are blind, those who may have other disabilities, that even after COVID is over, that they may be able to, in fact, continue to work from home?
So I think companies will be more open to people working from home. I think they see that during COVID is something that is possible, is doable for Of course, it depends on the job, the nature of the job, the position, and what have you. But for many people, yes, working from home is, I think, going forward, going to be in the mix. However, having said that, working from home requires that you rely heavily upon technology oftentimes. So making sure, though people have access to the things they need, the computers, and if you have a disability, if you're blind or visually impaired, the correct technology so that you can utilize the computer, and access the systems that your company has for you to access in an accessible format. So that can that can be another challenge onto itself, making sure that those are accessible. But the notion of working from home, I think, will be something in the mix going forward. What do you think, Ron?
Yeah, uh, I believe that working from home is going to be um, with us for a long time to come because it it's the advance of technology that's provided the opportunity for people to work from home, whether you're disabled or not. And I think people are enjoying it. Um, they're finding a total new aspect to their lives. You can work from home and make a decent living.
Yeah. One thing though, I think, it depends on the person. If a person's pretty good with the technology they have, I think that'll be extremely beneficial. But if somebody requires a lot of hand holding, so to speak, to figure things out, you need somebody to be right there, then that could be detrimental because you are working more independently. You're not around your colleagues who can come up and just explain something to you right away, or help you out with something. And you are working typically more independently, so utilizing those skills to troubleshoot problems that you may face, on your own, I think is going to be something that people are faced with more often.
During this COVID pandemic, we do want to talk about technology and COVID. Um, Charlotte Taylor is watching. Thank you for watching and sharing this. And Joanne Ballard in Memphis, that runs the neighborhood, the founder of Neighborhood Christian Center. She and her daughter are running it currently. But for services for the visually impaired or the blind, and trying to, it's been a challenge for a lot of people who are not familiar with technology to get registered for
Mm.
the vaccine. Can you all speak to that, and how can that be helped? How can we, or how did we get to this
Yeah.
point, Carlos?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, how
Yeah.
did we get to this point that the federal, state, and local agencies that set up websites to sign up to get your shot, your COVID vaccine, did not take into consideration blind people. How in the world, where was everybody?
That's an excellent question, and I don't know where they were. Because government sites such as the IRS, the Social Security Administration. I mean, those sites were designed especially with people in mind with disabilities. So now, I mean, these new sites come up, to help people register, to allow people to register for the vaccine. But with those sites coming up and not having been, reviewed or assessed for accessibility, that's beyond me. I'm not sure how that got past whoever, the mechanisms that were in place. Having said that, there is an article that describes some of the trouble that people who are blind or visually impaired are experiencing with the sites that are used to register for the vaccine. But not only that, even if you take disability out of the equation, I think the vaccine was first available to people who were 80 and over. And there's certainly people who are in that age group who know how to use websites, but there's a number of people who don't. And that's in any age group. I mean, and I think, we used to hear a lot about this digital divide. And I don't know if this is an example of that, but, some people just don't have the knowledge or the technology itself. If you don't have a computer or smartphone to get to a website, how are you going to get to a website? So yeah, it's interesting. I know they have 211 in a lot of areas that people can call, but at the same time, you want to, oftentimes people want to go on the website themselves for themselves and see what the schedule looks like and just schedule their own appointment. That's kind of the whole purpose of it all. But yeah, I don't know how these websites slipped past
Well,
the means to make sure that they're accessible.
Ron?
well, I guess it's not just a problem of digital divide; it's a problem of the social divide. Um, because in many communities, for example, when they set up the major center in Brooklyn just a week or so ago, they set it up primarily so that people who do not have access to computers had a place to go to register and to get vaccinated. And that meant a lot of minorities, black and brown individuals, and that would also include disabled persons who are in various community assistive living programs and so forth, so that they would have an opportunity to go to places like that, where they set up in Brooklyn. Here in my town of Charleston, for example, when the vaccine first came out more than a month ago, I just experimented and I said, okay, I know of a medical center in one of the poorest sections of Charleston, and I called there just to find out if there was any access, even by telephone. And at the time, that the medical center served a whole, almost a third of the section of Charleston, had no idea
Hmm.
what kind of program they were going to run, where they were going to get the vaccine, and when, and basically said, when something happens, we'll call you. I
Oh
never got a
wow.
call. I know the
Mm.
people in that town right now, that side of town, being properly served or not, blind or otherwise.
Wow. Wow.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
We think about these challenges, and um, Joanne Ballard just text homeless have no access as well. And I interviewed a woman who works with a homeless population here in Gainesville. And unfortunately, what she said to me is in line with what you were saying, Ron. African Americans who are homeless have less access to care. And then we know that they have less access to medical attention. And now you're saying in this clinic that you called,
Exactly.
they didn't even know what they were going to set up to be able to provide vaccines for the African Americans in that community, blind or not. That's sad. here in the
Hmm.
United States of America, that we
Exactly.
still continue to talk about these kinds of things,
Hmm.
even though there are agencies that are in place, and to think that somehow, as far as we have come with technology, somebody put together a program for people to get registered to get this life-saving vaccine, and they didn't consider the blind. Ah,
That's nothing. I don't mean this in a mean spirited way by any means, but from my personal experience, that's often the case. I mean, when something is planned or designed, oftentimes people, not only people who are blind, but people with multitude of different types of disabilities are not considered.
so, Ron, you currently serve on a national committee. Tell us about that group and what you all have
Hmm.
been able to do as it relates to
Well,
getting information to the disabled.
I know the group has been concentrating for the past several months on making sure that individuals who have been deinstitutionalized over the past 20 years or so, who now reside in assistive living communities, group homes, apartment living situations, supervised apartment living situations, that they have access to the vaccine and the PPEs, and that the staff who supervise and care for them um, um, have the proper materials and also have access to the vaccine. And they've been concentrating on that quite a bit. And the organization that I belong to is the Voice of Reason, um, centering on individuals who were developmentally disabled and who have been discharged from state facilities that have been closed. And it's a struggle to make sure that they're receiving the kind of care desired and needed. And I worked in the field, and myself, over the 30 years working in the state of Maryland, I probably deinstitutionalized somewhere between 700 and 1,000 individuals.
Wow.
And so I care about that population and what happens to them. And it was a kind of a struggle in my working life, trying to deal with the thought of, in many cases, placing people in community who did not, in many cases, did not have the adequate resources necessary to be cared for. It's improved over the years, but it's a struggle, and everyone is familiar with the deinstitutionalization of the mentally ill and the developmentally disabled over the past 20 years or more. That was instituted under the Reagan administration in the early 1980s. And so our Medicaid dollars go to supporting these people in the community in many cases. And that's what brought about the elimination of institutions. And for the mentally ill population, that has meant many of them has wound up in prisons. And so that's right now the biggest institution serving persons with mental illnesses in this country, really.
Mm. It's sad. Wow.
Very sad. That's an area through work that I've been able to do through NAMI over the years. That is an area that is something that I would like to get more involved in, because it is a shame in our country that we are using. We said that the mental hospitals were uh, not the place for people to be in institutions, yet we've allowed them to be kept in prisons, another institution,
Hmm.
actually, where the owners of those prisons get paid way more than the mental health hospitals were being paid to take care of this population in our country. Our guest tonight is
Yeah.
Ron Coleman in Charleston, South Carolina.
And you're and
Go
you're
ahead.
and you're so and you're so right about that. And in fact, I think I heard something recently that the current administration is trying to make moves to eliminate so-called privately run prisons. They're the ones that are making the money.
It breaks my heart. It really does break my heart because I hear those kinds of stories over and over again. Here we are in a pandemic that is gripping the world, and we're dealing with the physical and the emotional challenges that we all have been touched by. Tonight, we're talking about the
Mm-hmm.
disabled community, those who are visually impaired and those who are blind. Ron Coleman, who is in Charleston, South Carolina, who lost his vision when he was 12 years old. My cousin Carlos in Muncie, Indiana, who lost his vision around the age of 7. Gentlemen, do you all feel sometimes that as things are moving forward, that sometimes America or our communities are blind to what you need?
I'll let Ron take that one first.
Ron?
I think yes, I think that people still are behind the 8 ball when it comes to individuals who are blind. I mean, so often I run into the situation where, people in the community are just unfamiliar and uncomfortable being around persons who are blind or just otherwise disabled. The most frequent thing I run into is uh, people do not believe I should be out by myself. They expect for me to be with somebody who can be assisting me. And I call it the third person syndrome. If I'm out with my wife in many cases and they know that I'm blind, they want to speak to her, not to me. And quite often
Mm.
she has to say, he can speak for himself. And this will happen in the doctor's office, in the grocery store. I mean, we make light of it, but that's just one of the ways it goes. And
I,
people are just unfamiliar. They don't interact with the disabled population that often, and when they do, they may be uncomfortable, and they may avoid you, or they may become excessively uh, uh, offering assistance that you don't need, which will sometimes also lead you into trouble. Last night, I left home around 6:30 to a nightclub to perform, and the first thing happened to me was in one block, I ran into a lady who said, "You know what?" She said, "I have a golf cart. I can take you anywhere you want to go. Where do you want to go?" I said, "Ma'am, I'm just fine. I'm only going 6 blocks away from home, and I'll be there shortly." She wanted to put me in a golf cart and I'll take blocks.
yeah, there's no telling where you
This
would have
literally
ended
happened
up.
last night, 24 hours ago. But
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
and I still think that the employment market for blind individuals is just as bad as it was 50 years ago when I was a college student here in Charleston. I went to a medical center looking for a job as a college student, and they looked at me and said, "You need to go to the Blind Association."
Mm.
Well, that I was quite competent to probably do most of their summertime jobs. Uh, but I got the same reaction from St. Elizabeth Hospital in Washington, D.C., a major institution where I did summertime assistance as a social worker. And when I graduated, they still told me to go to a blind association. Blind
Hmm.
people
Right.
are capable of working in almost any industry. And when I
Hmm.
graduated from college and didn't know exactly where I was going to go, I said to somebody, I said, the Air Force is going to be here today interviewing college students. And I said, you know what? Technology has already advanced, and this was 1971 to the point where, you know, you could push a button and send a missile almost anywhere in the world. I said, I can do that. So I went to be interviewed by the Air Force.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Wow. Wow. Wow. Yeah. No, I fully agree with what
Yeah, so
Ron stated,
blind
and
people are
that.
many people, and
Sorry about that. No, I was just saying that I fully agree with Ron, and that there's definitely a lot of people who are still, they still don't know, and then they make assumptions, and then typically their assumptions are, greatly inaccurate, in thinking that, a person who's blind can't do this, can't do that, without taking time to realize the things that a person who's blind can't do. And I think a lot of that comes from, they think of themselves, if they were suddenly blind, what could they do? And I mean, and I understand that gives a lot of people a sense of helplessness. Um, but it's not the same. I used to do a lot of presentations, to school children, and adults as well. And there was one exercise that I eliminated from some of the presentations that I did, and that was, um, and then I don't know where I even saw this done, but somebody, there was a teacher who asked a student to, put on a blindfold, and it's like, well, then they asked the student afterward the experience, what was that like? And they were like, well, it's scary, it's this and that. And I thought to myself, that's not how I live my life. I don't walk around scared to take a step, So
Mhm.
when I started doing presentations, I eliminated that exercise, because that gives people the false sense of blindness. When if you suddenly become blind, the first day, of course, is going to be scary. You don't know a lot. But once you grow to learn skills and adaptations, then you learn to accomplish, a multitude of things. So just putting a blindfold on somebody for a couple minutes is nothing like, being blind, having learned skills, and acquiring the knowledge and tips and tricks and techniques that you would, use throughout your life. So anyway, having said all that, yes, there's a lot of people, there's still a lot of, um, society in general is behind. I'm encouraged. I would like to think, slowly but surely, uh, more and more people, companies are hopefully starting to see. I mean, that's part of the work that I do, and the work, with, the center that I work for, in providing internship opportunities for college students with physical disabilities. Not only is it providing the students with experiences, but it's also showing the employers that we work with that these are capable people of doing the work, that they're given to do.
It is estimated that the number of people in the United States is going to double. And as I said at the top of the show, the this is a community that any of us at any given time can become a member of
Mhm.
because of various things. Harriet Tubman lost her ability to see because she was hit in the head, and had seizures for the rest of her life. There are other people who have had injuries that become blind as a result of those injuries. Our elderly population, because of various things like glaucoma or
Mhm.
challenges with the retina, that people can lose their vision. I think this is critical conversation, just as you said, Carlos, for people to understand you don't live in a boogeyman world. You don't
Mhm.
live in fear. Ron, you don't live in fear, just as a lady wanted to put you on the golf cart to take you to a place that you knew where you were going. And I think that if we become more cognizant of the world that we are all in together,
Mhm.
and have more conversations with you and ask more questions, so this whole the mystery of how are blind people feeling and what are they thinking can go away, and we can address the challenges that we all face in the same manner. You want what I want.
Absolutely. Absolutely, because we're all people. That's the common theme. We're all people. We have
hmm
the same, you know, people who are blind or any other disability have the same goals. I mean, they may or may not, that's the thing too, but people can have goals and dreams and the will to accomplish things. And just because they have, whatever the disability is, doesn't mean that they can't have those same goals and desires.
As we are in the midst of, and this is our topic that we wanted to.
Well,
go ahead, Ron.
I was saying in my earlier work experience, part of my rationale for participating in the process that I operated in terms of deinstitutionalization, I believe profoundly that people lived a much richer life if they did not live in an institutional situation.
Mm-hmm.
Civilization is a philosophy that I believe in. And I think for persons who are institutionalized or people who are blind, the world will know them better the more they interact with the normal population. If you're segregated for personal reasons or for social isolation reasons or discrimination, um, the rest of society is always going to see you as some mystery figure that Jesus healed, as opposed to a person who needs your support and your respect and your interest into it, that they get an equal share of life and opportunities. So there has to be integration of the blind, the deaf, an integration socially, religiously, and most importantly, through employment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that is the work.
Otherwise, there's just a social barrier, gulf.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Carlos, you were about to
Absolutely.
say something?
No, I just fully agree. I fully agree with everything you said, Ron.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, as you alluded to, so when there's people who are out in their communities, I mean, of course, they're going about their lives, but other people see them and they see, okay, well, so and so is, going here or there and doing things, and so yeah, that person's capable of doing what they're doing. And like you said, people who are institutionalized don't have that same opportunity. They're almost hidden away from society. I mean, society at large would not see them, and therefore out of sight, oftentimes out of mind. So, but yeah, if you're integrated into society, then yeah, people see you, and that was part of kind of the disability movement in the 70s, before a lot of physical, um, buildings were made accessible. A lot of, they had stairs. People who used wheelchairs or other aids couldn't get into these, buildings, couldn't get on buses to go places. So society at large didn't see these people, but, people wanted rights, as well. So once some of the accessibility laws were passed and things started becoming more accessible, then people were then able to integrate into society more. I mean, there's still barriers, don't get me wrong, but there's been I think over the last 40 to 50 years rather, there's been some significant changes to allow that to happen.
As you all are navigating in the COVID world,
Oh, yeah.
one
Oh
of
yes,
the
there have been physically.
sorry, Ron, didn't mean to cut you off. I think you have a little delay. But as you're moving about, I know, Carlos, you have your trusted companion.
Mhm.
Ron, I'm not sure if you do or not. Sounds like you were walking alone. But how do you manage? Because we all
Y- y-
love your little
Oh yes,
doggy.
yeah. I no no I No, I have my trusted companion, and we travel together quite a bit. But there is still the expectation out there that whenever I'm out, I'm supposed to be with my companion. I went to a place last week, and I walked in, and a lady who we know turned around and said to me, "Where's your wife?" I
Like
mean,
you can't be
with
out
the
by yourself.
implication that I'm not supposed to be out without her.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
right. So Carlos, with your canine, you
Mhm.
what's your doggy's name?
His name is Ewok, Ewok, and
Did
he,
Ewok go to the dentist with you?
he did not. I left him home today because there's not much work involved for him when I go to the dentist. I mean, I step off the vehicle that dropped me off, walk, I don't know, maybe 20 feet to the door. It's a very small office, so there's not much there for him to do. So I just took my cane today, and so yeah, there's situations where I'll take my cane as opposed to my dog. It depends on the situation.
So when you do have your dog, do you still have people trying to talk to your dog? And if they're talking to your dog, they're within your 6 feet, so they're not staying away.
Right, right. I absolutely. And I mean, people who have dogs, pets of their own at home. I mean, that's one of the things they say, oh wow, and they want to talk to the dog or talk to you about the dog, which is fine. But in the general rule of thumb, just since we're here, is not to talk to a service dog. It can be distracting to the dog, to the work that the dog is doing. Um, but oh yeah, people do. Or I've been in situations where I've gone into a place with just my dog and myself, and we need to follow somebody to wherever we're going, and they'll say, "Oh, come this way, dog, come this way." They'll start calling the dog, and I have to do a little educating real quickly. Okay, no, don't call the dog, just tell me, and then I'll direct the dog on where to go. So
They talk to
yeah,
the dog and not you.
right. Yeah, that I've
The
had that
third
happen
person
several
syndrome
times.
again.
Right. Um,
That's funny. That
yeah,
is funny.
yeah. But
As
the
if because
distance. Oh,
no, go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, I know the distance. I mean, since I've been working from home, um, the 6 feet, that 6 foot distance thing is not as crucial in my daily life. But I do know of places that have, for example, marked on the floor, what 6 feet really is, so that people can stay apart. If they're standing in lines or what have you. Um, Fortunately for me, I have not had to encounter those situations very
Well, that could be
much.
a problem for a blind person.
But yes, it can be a very big problem for a blind person. So there are certain things definitely. Or I have a friend in Louisville who was saying that, well, his doctor's office or his wife's doctor's office, I couldn't remember which, but either way, the doctor's office said, well, just wait in your car. We don't want people coming in until it's your turn. Well, to get to the place to the medical center, you have to use paratransit, which doesn't pick you up right right exactly when you want them to. There's a window of time that they operate within. So, in the middle of winter, you can't really say, well, I'm going to stand outside this building for 30, 45,
Mm.
50 minutes until they let me in, because my transportation dropped me off, in this window of time. It doesn't work that way. So there are definitely some complexities.
My guest tonight, Ron Coleman in Charleston, South
Hmm.
Carolina,
Hmm.
Carlos Taylor in Muncie, Indiana. Hey, Carlos, your cousin Daisy Motley said, Cousin
Ah.
Carlos, I'm so proud of you. Cousin
Hey,
Daisy,
cousin
thank you.
Daisy.
Yeah, thank you
Yeah,
for watching, Cousin Daisy.
thank you.
And Cousin Josette Jenkins in Texas, outside of Dallas.
Oh wow.
Cousin Josette Jenkins outside of Golette. I mean, outside of Dallas, I think. Josette Jenkins Golette. I'm sorry for messing up your name. And in Memphis, Tennessee, Beverly, Kate
Mm,
Watkins Bradshaw. I really appreciate everybody watching, and
yeah.
I hope that everybody that has an opportunity to check in on someone that you know that is disabled, that is blind. This is a very challenging time for all of us. I'm here at home with my husband, Scott, but so many people are alone.
Mm,
Fortunately, you, Ron, and Carlos have people with you as well.
mm.
But talk to them about the mental aspect of what this is doing on top of the challenges that people with disabilities have, but the emotional challenges of being of this shutdown and how it's impacting people mentally.
Right. So definitely, I mean, the isolation. I mean,
Well,
a lot of people are doing.
when
No, go ahead, Ron. Go ahead.
isolation, yeah, yeah, social isolation can be very, very depressing, and I would suspect that during this year-long crisis, there must have been increase. I haven't checked the data, an increase in suicides, episodes of depression, and hospitalization. Things are intended to be social, and the opportunities been cut down in terms of the normal activities that human beings get themselves emotionally reinforced with. I mean, you can't go visit your grandparents and or your elderly parents. People are segregated, isolated. Many of them work from home, and the workplace is a major social integration and place where people have friends and relate and socialize. But all that has been rather restricted in the past year or
Mhm.
so. So
Right.
you're going to see heights of depression and suicide.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think, a lot of people
And
have,
that
um,
can occur in the disabled normally.
a lot of people have access to the social networks, but it's, the social, like Zoom and these video platforms, video conferencing platforms, but it's not the same. I mean, it's the next best thing. Don't get me wrong. I'm thankful that we have the technology, but it's not the same. And as Ron said, the isolation, um, leading to depression and, and hopefully, especially those of us who live in the north are going to start getting some better weather sooner than later. And so, getting outside, getting some fresh air, those things should certainly help. But, being, you know, closed up inside, indoors all winter long, and then the isolation on top of that, I can easily see how that would lead to feelings of depression for a lot of people.
How are you guys doing?
I'm good.
You good?
I'm
Ron,
good.
you're
Well,
good? Ron, you good?
I'm doing just fine myself, and just oh yeah, I'm doing just fine. I mean, I'm just went out today and bought some plants from the plant store, and I'm gardening already.
Wow.
Oh,
Okay.
good.
I'm gardening already. I'm putting plants in the ground in the boxes, and I enjoy it. Um, I think I picked up a couple of daisies today, and what was it? Nice smelling plant we bought. Dianthus, I think it was. Yes, Dianthus. So
We are
I got
jealous
them
of
all
you,
ready
Ron.
to put in a pot and boxes tomorrow. So thoroughly enjoy gardening,
Nice. We're
gardening
jealous
and
here in the
singing
north.
and Walking are three of my good hobbies.
So
Nice.
where is it
Helps
that
me
you
get out.
perform? So when we make it to Charleston, we can come hear you sing and play.
Well, I last night I performed at Hall's Chop House in downtown Charleston on King Street, and I also recently, over the past couple of months, I performed at Forte's Jazz Club
Ooh.
in
Mm.
downtown Charleston, and and other places around the area. Folly Beach, I have performed. And I'm new to the area here in Charleston. I left the town more than 50 years ago, and I just returned a year or so ago. And I, when I was in Maryland, I performed with a band for 26 years, in addition to my regular job. And now I don't have a regular job; I just have a hobby.
I've never been to Charleston, but when I do, I'm gonna come see you, Ron. That would be great.
Yeah, come on down. I'll tour you. I'll take you on a tour. It's a wonderfully historic city. And I'm actually 3 blocks away from Mother Emanuel Church,
Oh wow. Wow.
and
Okay.
quite a reverent place. I feel, and I have
So
followed and studied the history of it. And right now, I'm quite interested in trying to get to go on.
so you said you just moved
What was
to
your
where you
question?
live now, about a year ago. So just for people who are, watching this right now, how did you learn to go all these places, so quickly, independently?
Well, I never forgot. I never forgot the city. I learned it when I was like 7, 8, 9 years old as a paper boy,
Mm,
way back in the 50s,
hmm.
and I never forgot it.
Wow. And
So
it hasn't
it's like a
changed
map
very
in my
much then,
head.
I take it.
Well,
Carlos,
it's changed,
Carlos was
but
saying that it has.
not so significantly that I can't manage it. Mhm.
Hey, Ron. So listen. You were a
Fade it out.
paper boy,
Yeah,
Ron. You were a paper boy. You learned the city when you could see,
yeah.
because you didn't lose your sight till you were 12.
Hmm.
And you said you still have the
Right.
visual in your mind of the city. And Carlos was saying, so it hasn't changed that much from when you were there 12 years
Hmm.
old, and you lost your sight when you were 12. Is that why you can still get around so well in Charleston? It's such a, I mean, it's not like,
Well, it's changed. It has changed. It has changed. Buildings that used to exist don't exist anymore. One of the Charleston at one point during the time of slavery and thereafter in Reconstruction had the largest was primarily a black city. In the 1970s, they built a major 5 highway right through the heart of what was the community, a part of the black community in Charleston. So,
Mm.
coming back here to live now, I have to navigate a 5 lane highway that I have to find ways to get around. But otherwise, the city hasn't changed except for buildings that were now there that weren't there then. But no,
That's
I got the
fascinating. I
map.
mean, yeah, it's fascinating that as crucial as the highway system has been to the growth of the country. I mean, I'm hearing so many instances where highways came through crucial portions of towns where African Americans lived, and it has changed drastically.
yes.
Oh yes.
Same thing in New Orleans. Same thing.
Mhm.
There was no context
Uh-huh.
sensitive
Yeah.
designs happening.
There
They
are.
just
Yeah,
decided they drew a line, and wherever they wanted to build it, they built it.
Mhm.
run it right through town.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Gentlemen, it has been
Hmm.
such a pleasure.
So that's one of
Uh,
my major obstacles in getting around. But I
Go ahead, Ron.
yeah, I must do it again sometime. I said yes, and we
I'm
must do it again sometime.
yes, yes, yes. I certainly want to. And Carlos is shaking his head. Yes, also.
Absolutely. This is great. So I look forward to doing it again with you, Ron.
Carlos Taylor in Muncie, Indiana. Ron
Yeah,
Coleman in Charleston,
and
South
when we get
Carolina. And when we get together, what, Ron?
and I'd like to exchange contact information
Oh yeah,
with
we'll do that
Carlos
soon
as well
as
when we
yep,
get offline and so forth.
yep. Absolutely.
And
Yes.
you know what I would love to have one night? Because Carlos plays the keyboard too, Ron.
And,
Maybe you all can
I
play something together.
that would be
oh
fun.
wow!
That would be fun. Yeah.
Well, yeah, yeah. You play the keyboard, man.
Yeah.
I wish I had that talent. Yeah, we'll get ready for that. Why
We'll have to, yeah. We'll
not?
have to work something up. That would be great. That would be
Sounds
fun.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could have our own little mini concert.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, it truly has been an honor
Exactly.
tonight to have you all on.
Yes,
I
indeed.
look forward to doing it again. Uh, Ron, I really do appreciate you jumping on with us tonight.
Well, thank you for having me. I
A-
enjoyed doing it.
Absolutely. Carlos Taylor, my cousin Carlos in Muncie, Indiana. Carlos,
Yes, it's
it's
been a
always
pleasure.
it's always wonderful.
It is. It is. This is great, and I look forward to having Ron on
Nice,
again, and then having other
nice,
guests on
nice.
in the future as well.
Ron has that
All
delay.
right, we'll talk again.
All right. All right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Carlos. So you continue to hold it down, and I hope weather starts to break for you so that you can get out more. And Mom and Dad said, "Great job, great show." No,
Thanks, Mom and
that's
Dad.
no, that's your mother. I'm sure your dad said the same thing. But Luther Taylor Jr., my cousin Luther Taylor Jr., he said, "Great show."
Thanks, Junior.
Josette Jenkins Golette. That's your cousin too, and she's a fashion designer. She just had a
Ah.
virtual fashion show this past Sunday. It was
Ooh.
amazing.
Ooh. Nice.
She said amazing. She is as well. Hey,
Thank you.
for those of you watching, I really appreciate so much you watching. Um, I hope that this will inspire you to reach out to somebody that you know in your community. Whether it is a senior citizen that you know who may be alone, just to say hello, be cognizant of people that you see who have disabilities. They are just as human as you are. They want the exact same things that you want. And stop and say hello. Keep your distance, stop and say hello, and you'd be surprised how enlightened and inspiring they can be to you, because my life is certainly richer as a result of being connected with my cousin Carlos and bringing Ron into this conversation. So, gentlemen, again, thank you all so much for sharing with us and our audience tonight. And for those of you watching, please share and go to our YouTube page and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Wellness Radio TV, on YouTube, so that you can be notified of other shows that we will be doing to continue to share these great stories and enlighten and encourage during this time in this moment in our history. I'm Pamela Marshall at the Wellness Radio TV, at the Wellness Radio TV podcast. Remember, there is healing at the well. We will see you next time. We'll see you on Thursday for the Timbuktu Report. I do hope you'll join us. Good night.